Inside a California prison, the inmate who refused to leave solitary. They opened the cell door to move him out. He didn't step forward. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply shook his head and said quietly, "I'm not leaving." Stay with this story. What happens next almost didn't get stopped. The officer froze. In 10 years on the job, refusals usually came with anger, threats, or desperation. This was none of those. The inmate stood calmly at the back of the segregation cell, hands visible, posture controlled. Too controlled. "Pack up," the officer said again. "You're being reassigned." The inmate didn't move. His eyes stayed on the floor, as if he was measuring something no one else could see. "If I leave this unit," he said, "I won't make it through the night." The officer radioed it in as resistance. Procedure required escalation. A supervisor arrived. Then mental health staff. The cell door stayed open the entire time, a quiet standoff that made everyone uneasy. This wasn't how refusals went. The inmate had been in solitary for 93 days. Long enough for most people to beg for daylight, conversation, anything. He had requested review after review, not to leave, but to stay. Each request had been denied. Solitary wasn't meant to be permanent. It was restrictive housing, not protection. That distinction mattered on paper. On the floor it mattered less. The supervisor tried a different tone. "You're cleared for general population. That's a good thing." The inmate finally looked up. "You think that?" he said. That was the first warning. His file didn't mark him as high risk. No active conflicts. No recent write-ups. No formal threats logged. The system saw a man who had served his segregation time and needed to return to the unit. The man saw something else. Mental health staff asked the standard questions. Was he afraid? Was he experiencing paranoia? Was there a specific person or group threatening him? He answered carefully. "I don't need to name anyone," he said. "You already know who runs that tier." They told him fear alone wasn't enough to justify continued isolation. He nodded as if he'd expected that answer. The supervisor checked the clock. They were already behind schedule. Housing transfers stacked up fast, and the longer this took, the harder it would be to manage. "We can escort you," the supervisor said. "Extra staff." "That won't matter," the inmate replied. "Why?" The inmate hesitated. Just long enough to suggest calculation, not confusion. "Because the move is the message," he said. No one responded. They interpreted it as stress. That was the second warning. The inmate's history showed no disciplinary issues tied to violence. But Morales, the officer assigned to document the incident, noticed something else while reviewing his past placements. He'd been moved 5 times in 3 years. Always quietly. Always after brief stays in general population. Each time, the reason logged was inmate request. Morales frowned. Most inmates requested moves to escape problems. This one requested moves after problems should have surfaced. There were no incident reports tied to him. No assaults. No formal threats. Just movement. Morales brought it up to the supervisor. "Why does he keep cycling?" "Some inmates can't settle," the supervisor said. "Adjustment issues." "But there's no record of incidents," Morales replied. "That's not unusual," he said. "Not everything gets written up." That was the third warning. The inmate finally spoke again. "You won't see anything in my file," he said. "Because nothing's happened yet." Mental health staff exchanged glances. That phrasing mattered. "What do you think will happen?" one asked. The inmate leaned back against the wall. "I think you're about to move me because it's easier than listening," he said. "And I think when you do, something you can't undo will start." No raised voice. No dramatics. Just certainty. The supervisor ended the discussion. Protocol allowed temporary refusal, but not indefinite. The inmate would be moved at the next shift change. For now, the door closed. Morales lingered after everyone else left. She asked the inmate one last question through the slot. "Why here?" she asked. "Why is this safer?" He answered immediately. "Because no one needs to send a message to someone who's already alone." Morales felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. She returned to the desk and pulled unit intelligence reports. Not official incidents, informal notes. Patterns. Rumors. Unverified mentions of pressure, of order, of inmates being told where they could and couldn't sit. The inmate's name never appeared, but the names around him did. Same time periods. Same transfers. Morales flagged it and sent it up the chain. It was marked non-actionable. The transfer order went through anyway. That night, Morales checked the segregation log one more time. The inmate was still there, sitting on the bunk, waiting. He looked calm, as if he already knew what would happen next. And when Morales cross-checked the movement schedules against unit assignments, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. Every time this inmate had been moved out of isolation, someone else had disappeared from the general population within 48 hours. Transfers. Medical removals. Sudden reclassifications. None logged as violence. None connected. But when she checked the logs, everything changed. The transfer order went live at 6:12. By then, Morales had already printed the movement logs and spread them across the desk. The pattern was clearer now, not because it was dramatic, but because it was quiet. Too quiet. Every time the inmate left segregation, someone else left the unit shortly after. Not officially harmed. Not written up. Just gone. Reassigned. Medically separated. Moved to another facility without explanation. No single incident justified concern. Together, they formed a rhythm. Morales forwarded her notes again, this time flagged urgent. The response came back in less than 5 minutes. Transfer stands. No actionable threat identified. That was the mistake. At 7:30, officers arrived at the segregation unit to prepare the inmate for movement. He complied this time. No hesitation. No protest. That worried Morales more than the refusal. Inmates who felt safe didn't change their minds overnight. He packed slowly, folded what little he had, placed his hands behind his back without being told. His face showed neither relief nor fear. As they walked him down the corridor, he glanced once at the camera mounted above the exit door. Just once. Later, Morales would replay that footage again and again, trying to understand what he'd seen in that look. Recognition, maybe. Or confirmation. The escort proceeded without incident. No tension on the tier. No unusual movement. The general population unit looked exactly as it always did. Loud, crowded, controlled chaos. The inmate stepped inside. And the clock started. Morales stayed in the control room instead of heading home. She watched the feeds. She told herself she was being cautious, not paranoid. At 8:11, the inmate reached his assigned cell. At 8:14, he sat on the bunk. At 8:18, 2 inmates from adjacent cells stood up at the same time. Morales leaned forward. There was no confrontation, no shouting, no obvious coordination. Just movement that looked coincidental unless you knew what to look for. At 8:26, one of those inmates left the tier for a scheduled program. He didn't return. The log marked it as a medical escort. Morales checked the medical channel. No call. At 8:41, another inmate was reassigned midday, an unusual move that normally required advance notice. The justification read, administrative adjustment. Morales felt her stomach tighten. She pulled the inmates' prior transfer dates and overlaid them with housing rosters from previous facilities. The same thing had happened every time. Not violence. Not reports. Just quiet removals. Like pieces being cleared from a board. At 9:02, the inmate looked directly into the camera in his cell. This time, he held the gaze longer. Morales radioed the unit supervisor. "I think we need to pull him back." The supervisor hesitated. "On what grounds?" "Pattern escalation," Morales said. "This isn't coincidence." There was a pause. Then, "Nothing's happened." "That's the point," she replied. The supervisor promised to review it. He didn't. At 9:17, an alarm briefly flickered on one of the monitors. Not a full alert, just a system check. It cleared itself in under 2 seconds. Most staff didn't notice. Morales did. She switched feeds. The corridor outside the inmate's cell was empty. No signs of tension. Then she saw the movement. Not fast. Not aggressive. A hand signal. Well, easy to miss. The inmate didn't respond. He didn't need to. At 9:23, a different inmate collapsed in the common area. No visible cause. No altercation. Staff responded immediately. Medical escort confirmed. Morales stood up so fast her chair fell backward. She called it in again, louder this time. This is connected. We need to lock the unit. The response came back sharp. You're drawing lines that aren't there. By 9:40, 3 inmates had been removed from the unit for unrelated reasons. None had prior issues that morning. None were in the same cell. Except they all had one thing in common. They'd all been housed near the inmate who had refused to leave solitary. Morales finally got authorization to review intelligence notes, the informal kind. Not official reports. Conversations. Observations. Whispers staff wrote down but never escalated. A phrase kept appearing. Order. Not a gang name. Not a group. Just a word. Used the same way each time. Things stay in order. Order was maintained. Didn't want to disrupt order. Morales cross-referenced those notes with the inmate's previous locations. The same word appeared at every facility. The inmate wasn't hiding from violence. He was hiding from structure. By the time the supervisor approved a unit lockdown, the damage, whatever form it took, was already done. No one was injured. No one was charged. But 3 inmates were gone from that tier in under 2 hours. The inmate remained. When officers finally returned him to segregation that afternoon, he didn't resist. As the door closed, Morales asked him one question through the slot. Why didn't you say this would happen today? He answered quietly. Because you only listen after the mistake, he said. That night, Morales reviewed the logs one final time. The inmate had been right. The moment he was moved, the system adjusted around him. Not violently, efficiently. And the realization settled in. The lockdown came too late to stop what mattered. By the time segregation accepted the inmate back, the unit had already reset itself. Beds reassigned. Names removed from the daily roster. Movement logs finalized and signed off. On paper, nothing unusual had occurred. That was the most unsettling part. Morales stayed overnight again. She requested a full audit authorization, knowing it would take weeks to get approval, and that most of what she needed would disappear before then. But she started anyway. She began with the 3 inmates removed that morning. One was transferred to medical observation for stress-related symptoms. One was reassigned to a work detail in another wing. One was moved off-site to a different facility entirely. None had filed complaints. None had requested protection. None were officially linked to one another. Except through proximity. Morales pulled camera footage from the week before the transfer. She slowed it down. Frame by frame. What looked like casual movement started to resolve into something else. Eye contact that lingered half a second too long. Hands resting on railings at the same angle. Inmates standing up not together, but in sequence. Not chaos. Coordination. The inmate at the center of it never initiated anything. He never gestured. Never spoke in visible ways. His role wasn't leadership in the traditional sense. It was presence. Morales found a note buried deep in the intelligence archive, written years earlier by an officer who'd retired before she joined the department. The note was short. Some inmates don't move people. They move outcomes. That officer had flagged the same inmate, younger than, after a similar transfer attempt. The result had been identical. Quiet reshuffling. No violence. No formal incident. The conclusion at the time had been simple: coincidence. Morales didn't believe in coincidence anymore. She requested an interview. The inmate agreed immediately. They met in a bare room, separated by glass. No hostility. No tension. He sat calmly, hands folded, posture relaxed in a way that only came from certainty. You didn't want to stay in solitary, Morales said. You wanted to avoid what happens when you leave it. He nodded once. Why? She asked. Because isolation is predictable, he said. People aren't. Morales slid the logs toward him. Every time you move, others do too. Not because of fights. Not because of threats. But because something shifts. He looked at the papers but didn't touch them. "I don't tell people what to do," he said. "I tell them when not to be somewhere." Morales felt a chill. "You're saying you warn them?" He shook his head. "I don't warn. I confirm." He explained it slowly, carefully, as if choosing words mattered. Inside each unit, informal systems formed. Not gangs. Not alliances. Systems of influence built around trust, debt, and timing. Most inmates never saw them. Staff rarely did. But some people became reference points. When he was in general population, people watched him. If he stayed calm, they stayed calm. If he prepared to move, they moved first. Not because he ordered them, because he was reliable. When I asked to stay in solitary, he said, it wasn't fear. It was responsibility. Morales leaned forward. Responsibility for what? For the aftermath, he said. When you force change too fast, someone always pays. Morales understood then. The inmate wasn't dangerous because he caused disruption. He was dangerous because the system reacted to him. Every transfer forced hidden structures to compensate, to rebalance, to remove variables. That morning, the system had done exactly what it was designed to do. It corrected itself. The 3 inmates removed weren't victims of violence. They were variables. Morales escalated her findings. The response came days later. No wrongdoing found. No policy violations identified. Inmate to remain in segregation under administrative review. Quiet, contained, controlled. The inmate got what he wanted, but not because staff believed him, because it was easier. Morales transferred out of the facility 6 months later. The inmate remains in protective custody to this day. He's requested no changes, filed no complaints, spoken to no one beyond required interviews. His presence stabilized the unit. That, too, was documented. The final note in the file reads, segregation placement appears to reduce secondary movement disruptions. Not a warning, a conclusion. And that's the part that lingers. Because nothing violent happened. No alarms blared. No fights broke out. No headlines were written. But the system learned something. And so did Morales. Some prisoners don't fear isolation. They use it. And if the wrong decision is made again, this could happen again. The file was closed without ceremony. No press release. No internal bulletin. No recommendation for systemic change. Just a digital stamp and a date. Morales read the closure notice twice, not because it surprised her, but because of what it didn't say. There was no mention of the pattern. No reference to secondary removals. No acknowledgement that an inmate's presence or absence could quietly alter an entire housing unit. The system had decided the safest outcome was silence. In the months that followed, the facility reported fewer incidents, fewer transfers, fewer unexplained movements. On paper, it looked like progress. In reality, it was containment. The inmate remained in segregation by choice. His cell logs showed compliance, consistency, predictability. Mental health evaluations described him as stable, oriented, and cooperative. One note stood out. Demonstrates high situational awareness. That phrase appeared again in later assessments. Other facilities had seen it too. Morales, now assigned to a different region, began noticing familiar details during routine reviews. Small disruptions that never became incidents. Housing units that quietly reshuffled after certain arrivals. Inmates requesting segregation not as punishment, but as preference. The requests were almost always denied. Until they weren't. Because every time staff forced reintegration without understanding the underlying structure, something subtle broke. Not violence. Not chaos. Efficiency. Medical escorts increased. Administrative transfers spiked. Unexplained reassignment requests followed. Always just enough to raise questions. Never enough to demand answers. Morales reached out to former colleagues. Quietly. Off record. The same stories surfaced again and again. An inmate who asked not to be moved and wasn't believed. A unit that felt off 4 days afterward. Logs that made sense individually but not together. The phrase changed slightly from facility to facility, but the meaning stayed the same. Things settled once he was isolated. That was the lesson the system took from it all. Not why it worked, just that it worked. Years later, Morales reviewed a training document on inmate management. Buried near the end was a single line. In rare cases, voluntary segregation may reduce operational instability. No explanation, no example, no warning, just a sentence. She thought back to the inmate's words. You only listen after the mistake. The truth was harder than she wanted to admit. The system didn't fail because it ignored a warning. It failed because it didn't know how to interpret one. Not all threats look like violence. Not all control comes from force. And not all safety comes from freedom. Some people understand the structure well enough to step outside it, not to escape, but to stop it from breaking. And when they do, the system has only two choices. Learn, or isolate the problem and move on. Most of the time, it chooses the second. Because learning requires change. And change is risky. The inmate remains where he is, quiet and unseen, doing exactly what he said he was doing from the start. Keeping order, not by commanding it, by removing himself from it. That's what makes this story unsettling. Not what happened, but what didn't. And the next time an inmate refuses to leave isolation, not in fear, but with certainty, the question won't be whether he's hiding from danger. It will be whether the system is ready to understand why. Because if it isn't, this could happen again. If this story stayed with you, the next one won't let go.